Hey everybody, welcome back to the SWICTech Leading Business Podcast. Today is July 6th, and hopefully everybody had a safe and happy 4th of July weekend. My name's Eric. I'm one of the Client Success Associates here at SWICTech, and Shane's here with us as well.
Yeah, hey Eric, it's good to be on with you. Happy 4th of July. Hope your weekend was awesome. I'm excited to chat about this topic today.
Yeah, our topic of discussion is everything's being disrupted. We're going to talk about disruption, but through a different lens and kind of just one of the things that we see happening there from our seat, and try to find some ways to compare that to what consumers can expect to see and how that ties back into business.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool articles and topics that we're going to touch on today that relate to anybody and everybody, right? It's all out there in the news and has to do with the food industry and everything else. So I'm excited to see where this goes.
Yeah, tell me about your weekend first before we dive in.
Yeah, for sure. My weekend was great. I maximized my on-water time with our kayaks, so that was super awesome, which is even more of a benefit when you consider how much of a hassle it is to dig those things out of my garage and get them on top of the car. So it was nice to use all 3 days of this long weekend to go kayaking. We went all over the place, so it was super fun to see some different lakes and rivers in the area, and we had a good time with a small group of our immediate family for a little celebration. How about you guys? How was your weekend?
That's good. Real quick before I get into it, I was curious, what type of wildlife did you see?
Mostly birds.
Yeah.
Yeah, not a lot. Turtles too, I guess, on the lakes. But nothing too exciting. Honestly, so I was at my parents' for the 4th after we had kayaked all morning down the Milwaukee River for like 3 or 4 hours. And so we're just hanging out at their house, and we went for a walk around their neighborhood, and there's just random deer in people's yards around their neighborhood. So I saw more wildlife outside of the water than I did in.
That's funny. Go figure. It's how it goes sometimes.
Yeah, for sure.
Our weekend was pretty low key. I did a lot of grilling on the pellet grill, and I did some salmon fishing on Lake Michigan on Sunday morning, dark and early, and we did good. I think we had like 6 or 7 fish landed in the boat, one 22.5-pound Silver King, which is a good size fish. We ended up cooking some of that up on the grill. We did some blackened salmon, and it was delicious. So we have some left over that we're gonna do some fish tacos with tonight.
Oh, nice. That's a good call. I love how you're like, oh yeah, my weekend was chill. I just like chartered a boat and went out fishing in the middle of Lake Michigan. No big deal.
That was the only real like big spurt of excitement. Otherwise, lots of time outside and stuff like that. So it was good. Low key other than that. But to dive in today, we wanted to just make this relatable because I think the consumer world is super fast. Like the business to consumer world is very fast, and us as consumers, we experience technology in such a positive way. But then in the business world, it's sometimes lagging behind. For
maybe
obvious
even the opposite, right?
Yeah. So we just wanted to talk about what we see there and try to relate it back to some of the things even SWICTech is working on to address some of the disruption that might be in the future here. And one of the first examples that we kind of called out was the media world or the media space, and specifically the traditional media like watching TV versus some of the OTT over the top advertising. Sorry.
No, you're good. I don't know that I can recall the last time I sat down and watched a regular, TV show over the air with commercials in it. I literally cannot recall. It's been that long.
Well, it's also in part maybe because there's no sports right now.
Well, that definitely has something to do with it. But even sports, I stream on an app on my Apple TV rather than traditional antenna or cable provider. So even those, the commercials are different. They're shorter and kind of less
targeted, right? They really can
more targeted. They're very location targeted, right? So I watch the Milwaukee Bucks on Fox Sports Wisconsin, and I get just all Wisconsin, just 100% Midwest ads on there. But it's also, they're like just short and sweet snippets, and it's really easy to just like, unfortunately for the people who post those ads, I feel like it's really easy to like tune those out,
Yeah.
whereas opposed to traditional commercials where you're sitting there for 3.5 minutes of nonsense, and the only time you ever get a good commercial is the Super Bowl. So
Right. Right.
it's
Which is
crazy
something
though.
the NFL still might be okay for, September. We'll see. Um, but you're absolutely right in that. I mean, there's two screens in our house, or two, I mean, so we have, two TVs, and then, my wife and I each have a phone, and we're not watching the TV. In fact, the only thing I really like, what I like most about the TV now that is a smart TV, is I actually watch the YouTube app on there a lot for a lot of the content that I consume there. So I'm using the TV, but it's a glorified cell phone in that case.
Right. And if you think of the traditional like advertising concept, man, I like a regular old commercial is not how I decide how to buy something. Nowadays it's social media and the newer advertisements and stuff like that, or watching YouTube clips of things and reviews and stuff. So it's crazy how much it's shifted. And to think that like the advertising business is still, I'm sure, billions of dollars strong as far as like traditional TV ads go is unreal to me when you think about the other avenues that people have to advertise and how people consume content.
Yeah, those
It's
dollars
crazy.
have started to shift, but they haven't given full way to. And there's some things in recent events that it's very interesting to see what's going on, where people are pulling spend on some of those platforms. Um, However, the real interesting thing, the one, or the important piece I wanted to call out, was this whole concept of like subscribing to cable TV, where you get, a couple hundred channels and or packages. And I just want to watch like ESPN for football, and maybe HBO for like one of the shows that's good at the time, like Game of Thrones or what have you. I don't
Yeah.
want the other 199 channels that I'm not going to care about or watch, or maybe I just want to consume the news. And it seems like that model is being flipped on its head quite a bit because of what OTT over the top has done, where you can just go right to the source now. HBO has its own app, ESPN has its own app. I don't need to have a cable package to consume the content that I want.
Right. I mean, yeah, it's even look at how successful Disney Plus is, right? And that's not even a
Very
year old. That's
incredibly
like
old.
8 months ago they launched Disney Plus. I mean, obviously we're in the middle of a pandemic, and so it's a bit of a unique situation, but they like Disney didn't see that coming, right? They still just launched Disney Plus and put billions of their dollars into this streaming platform to rival Netflix and Hulu and anyone else that's out there right now in that space. And they're all just raking in money. Everyone's signing up for those services. And it's because, yeah, to your point, you get the one or two things that you want, or this huge batch of, old movies that you can go back and look at and watch for what, like 8, 9, 10,
Seven
11
bucks a month
dollars a
Disney
month?
Plus compared to what's the typical cable package? 40?
I don't even
It's
want to know. No, I think that's absurdly low. I think if you're getting cable, they're gonna sucker you into an internet phone and cable package for
heaven forbid you
like
don't have the whole
a
package.
minimum of 120, I think, these days. Which is
But
nuts. And
the
then
way
you
we
have a
speak
phone
about
that
it,
you
we
don't
think it's the
use.
most ridiculous thing in the world. So there's still a number of people that, live that way, and that's fine. But I just think the trend is going to continue to dismantle some of that as we go more to like an on-demand model than a packaged deal of
Right.
some sort.
I would say so. My parents are a good example of this. They're like very not tech savvy. What is that called? Like a laggard in the
Yeah, I think so.
in adopting technology. Um, they My dad a little bit more because he's employed still. He works for a big company, so he's got his own computer for work and all that stuff, and he does email and everything. But my mom, gosh, she just recently got like Gmail and stuff like that, and they're still the type of people that are using cable TV, right? They still buy cable TV, and now my mom is kind of hooked into Hulu a little bit. My sister got her like turned on to a show that was only on Hulu, and so they subscribed to Hulu. And now my mom is starting to see it like, oh, why am I paying a fortune for this stupid cable package when
Yeah,
I
all the
just like
stuff is
watching the stuff
something.
that's on Hulu?
Yeah, yeah. The
So
days of
it's
channel
crazy.
surfing are maybe finally behind us.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's I don't know. So that's just something. these are just consideration points and fascinating topics that are going to lead us to where we're going with this whole conversation. But even if you look at the automotive industry, which is some of the other bullet points we have here, um, the traditional gasoline engine, if we look in and we talk about disruption, what are the next 10 to 20 years, or maybe 5 to 15? What does that look like? It's going
This
to
topic,
completely and radically change.
this topic is so sad because I love cars and motorcycles and internal combustion engines in general to tinker with and putz with. But yeah, it's so true, right? Like that just last week now all of a sudden Tesla is valued at more than Toyota. It's like that feels like it was
Producing
5 minutes
fraction
ago.
of the vehicles too.
Yeah, it's
So
crazy.
it
So
goes to show what the potential of that industry looks like compared to the one that's flourishing, present day still. And the number of startups around that. Tesla is the leader. I think they quite literally, when we think about business, building roads, not cars. And if we're talking about automotive, that is not a pun. It's a way of thinking. However, Tesla has built, the charging stations strategically around their model. And it's not just that you're getting a car that's non-gasoline, it's a smart vehicle that's
right.
tapping into an entire fleet of vehicles that's feeding data back to a data lake, and then they're putting AI on that, and there's a lot of data learnings that are going back into improving the transportation and the vehicle itself, as well as the charging stations. It's pretty incredible how masterful that has just continued to come together.
Yeah, my favorite part of that whole concept is think about so when was Tesla founded? I don't know, probably like 10 or so ish years ago. I mean,
Yeah,
probably a
seven,
little bit more than that. But they kind of started, people started to know what Tesla was, 5, 10 years ago. And at that point, I distinctly recall a lot of the large car manufacturers like GM, Ford, the big guys in the space saying like, oh, that's nonsense, like electric cars, whatever, Tesla, whatever, it's fine. We're just gonna, keep chugging along here in our comfy gas vehicles and making millions and billions of dollars. And now all of a sudden, fast forward, and GM and Ford and other car companies are dumping boatloads of money into trying to figure out how to catch Tesla and how to make electric vehicles and, like you said, smarter vehicles with all the bells and whistles and the AI and everything. So it's crazy
yep.
to watch them. They did a complete 180, right? They're like, oh, that's stupid. To we're gonna go out of business if we don't spend all of our money on this.
Yep, they will. The supply chains are going to have havoc wreaked on them too. Like all the companies that are in that ecosystem or that supply chain of like producing a part for a gasoline engine, it's all going to change pretty rapidly in retrospect. I mean, even the adoption of the automobile itself didn't take very long, and that was a long time ago. So it's
Right.
fascinating. What's really interesting is there's a page from history here that electric cars are not new. They were actually the first type of car that ever emerged back when cars were invented, but the technology for the battery just wasn't there. And um, Tesla was someone that was trying to work on that, and then Henry Ford, kind of revolutionized the production process of these vehicles, and it just changed from to gasoline. And so now we're kind of coming full circle and going back to where we started with this whole thing. Now that the technology's finally caught up.
Yeah, that's some fun history right there. By the way, I did just look it up because I felt bad not knowing
Good.
when it was founded and all of the numbers. So Tesla was founded in 2003, but they didn't release their first car until 2008. So I wasn't too far off.
Yeah, that's funny because I referenced 2007, right? And thinking about their first car. That's cool. Yeah,
So
and just to think about that though, the disruption of that space and how much the data that's going to be aggravated from the fleet of vehicles um, through like a 5G network or whatever it's going to end up becoming, it changes the driving experience drastically.
I mean, and that's kind of a common theme that you're seeing in general these days as far as technology goes, right? It's this concept of being able to use the information and data that people, individual consumers, provide you to then make your service better and more awesome, right? Like Netflix does that, right, with their matching process and all that stuff, right? They use user inputted data on what other people like you watch and all this sort of stuff. So it's not just cars, right? It's media, it's everything that's kind of starting to go that route. I mean, your cell phone, right? Google Maps, that's what Google search is predicated on, right? Like the general principle of serving advertisements to certain audiences and stuff like that. So that's not new, but it's cool that we're finally starting to see it in everything, right? Even your like cars are kind of a weird thing for that, right? You don't really think of your car as being connected to anything because it can literally drive anywhere. But now it is, right? Like with Tesla and some of these newer models and stuff. So it's really exciting to see that that technology is kind of finally going to start ripping apart some of these industries.
When it compounds the time frame, I think it definitely accelerates things. So
Mm-hmm.
like what took us forever to get here isn't going to take us very long to get to the next, benchmark in this process of things. It's just going to keep speeding up, and so the rate of change is increasing because of the data that we're collecting to help inform the next decision we're making. It's getting better and faster and better and faster and better and faster. So, the one industry that I think I'm excited to see what's going to happen here is the food industry.
Yeah,
And you talk
that's
about being in a pandemic and it's changing things. This pandemic is really forcing a lot of behaviors that may have already been kind of slightly emerging and kind of there or slowly getting to where they want to go. And it's accelerated a lot of things that may have already been kind of there to begin with, if that makes sense.
yeah, I think that's super true for the food industry. And these are things I think that we're going to take years, if not decades, to change, right? To change people's habits and stuff. And now here we are stuck in the midst of a pandemic where you're not allowed to go to a restaurant, you're not allowed to dine out, that sort of stuff. You don't want to go places because you don't want the coronavirus. And so it's crazy to see how, just in a couple of months, the grocery shopping industry has shifted so much online. And then, with takeout and apps and delivery for food, like all that stuff has just kind of seen major growth because of the necessity right now. But it's going to be cool to see what long-term effects that has on the industry.
Yeah, I wonder if we start to apply some of these principles of like, I don't want to pay for all of this stuff. I only want what I want when I want it. And then the data collection side of things. So there's a couple paths that I, kind of see taking place. Um, one of them is so when we went salmon fishing right on Lake Michigan yesterday morning, and so we were up very, very early. I think I woke up at 3 a.m. to get down there, by 4:30 to be ready to go. And you spend this whole time, it's 5 hours on the boat, and then you get back and you lug your cooler back to your car. And at this point, it's probably 10 a.m. So no breakfast in this span of time, just some coffee and water. And so traditionally, I think what
No.
we wanted to do is stop and get lunch at a nice restaurant down there.
Oh, right. And you can't right now.
And we couldn't really do that. So um, then we just drove all the way back home to the Lake Country area, like a 40-minute drive. And then we were like, well, let's get some food from somewhere. And then you start to look at your options, like what restaurants can deliver, what comes, prepared well. But some restaurants are better than others. Like maybe some put in styrofoam, there's condensation, so all my fries are soggy, or what have you, right? But
Yeah.
um, you know, I see a world where there's just one giant building full of all sorts of different types of cuisines and ethnic types of foods, and there's a single brand that I go to an app and I pick whatever food I want, and then it comes from there, and it's optimized for delivery, made for delivery. So the way that I get that food isn't going to be soggy fries. It's going to be what I want without having to pick all of these different branches, or maybe those branches are all under that one roof anyways, the different brands. So maybe I can get a Chili's from whatever this thing could be called. So that's one way I see that going, where that industry can completely change.
Yeah, and I think you kind of see fabric of that already in that industry, right? When you consider like the concept of a food truck, right? They kind of threw out the dine-in experience and were like, screw it, we literally have a kitchen on wheels. We'll come to you, we'll make delicious food, and it's just in, some random park or at a brewery or whatever, so you can do you rather than have to sit in our restaurant that we don't want to have to pay for anyway, right? So that's part of it. And then on top of that, there are some, I don't know what you want to call it, but like kind of food court concepts already in existence, to your point, right? Where you have just kind of one spot for multiple different cuisines. Food court is a terrible word for it
Food
because
hall is the
it looks
accurate name.
all, but
But I'm thinking like a food hall where it's all app based and no one, it's not
yeah,
designed for
right.
sit down. No, like if it was literally only designed to be ordered and delivered,
I
I
think that's the next step, right? They were already there with the food hall concept where you have a bunch of different cuisines and you can come in and they don't have one single restaurant. It's a big open space, or you can go outside and dine, and they don't have to deal with their own restaurant and stuff. I think what you're talking about is kind of the next logical step in that. And now with having the pandemic where you can't even really dine in or don't want to dine in anyway, yeah, why would we be making a service with tables and a restaurant space for you to come dine if no one wants that? Of course, they're going to kind of shift that gear and switch to making food to be better for dining out.
yep,
That's the only way restaurants are going to survive this, right? So they have to.
it's
If you
fascinating.
have a poor experience, like you said, you go somewhere right now to do dine out and the food tastes like garbage by the time you get home because it was wrapped in styrofoam and now your fries are soggy. Like you're not going to go back to that restaurant.
No, no. And that leads us to like the next kind of logical thing is like the grocery stores, which you mentioned, have really changed. Like the online ordering capabilities have been significantly improved, and that's been upticking like crazy. If we look at some of the articles that we captured. But then, like, what about the smart kitchen? And again, this data feedback loop. So if it's the other example, like the restaurants under one roof, now we can look at the data of all the orders coming in, dissect that, slice it up, and determine what do people really want, and continue to improve that.
Mhm.
Um, if there's a smart kitchen, maybe my refrigerator just automatically orders new milk when it sees that the gallon is at a quarter of a gallon, and it just shows up as part of my automated monthly delivery service that I don't have to touch.
You know that's coming. Like it absolutely has to.
It's already there in some cases, like these smart refrigerators that already exist. And then you have Amazon on top of that with like their grocery list. I don't want
Yeah,
to say the
I
Alexa
figure
too loud,
out
but I might
how
trigger a speaker in this house. It's gonna
to.
order me some more milk or something. Um, but we're just getting to a very exciting time. Now that's all consumer stuff, though. So what about businesses? And what does all this fancy technology mean? Like for a lot of the companies that do B2B work for manufacturing, et cetera. I think a lot about like how Switech supports a lot of these businesses throughout the Midwest. And then we started to talk about like, well, what does disruption look like for us? And the exciting thing that you had called out, Shane, is that look, technology is the underlying factor of all of this. All of this change is driven by more technology capabilities. And we have a team of people that's their life, that's their career, is to make this technology work for people in exciting and new and emerging ways. Um, so if we go back to the cable example, the OTT versus like traditional cable, maybe someone doesn't want every single thing that we offer for one price. Maybe they want to chop that up. And those are some of the requests that we've been seeing come through from businesses that
Yeah.
I believe is really driven by the consumer world. Um, and you're part of the client engagement team where we've been trying to create offerings to align with that need and demand on the customer side.
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of them, and I can touch on a few of them, but I think really the important thing that people need to know and people need to hear right now is like, if you're a business, small business, large business, whatever, you gotta be focusing on using technology to bring that new exciting solution to your customers, to the consumers, right? Because we're only hearing about those companies that are doing that, right? We just rattled off a huge list of companies: Tesla, Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, all these other big companies out there. Like those companies are investing crazy, crazy dollars in technology because they know that the quicker they get there, the quicker they bring that cool, new, awesome, exciting technology to their consumers, while they can also then mine that data, right? It's a double-edged sword. Now, not only is the consumer happy, but the company is getting smarter and figuring out more and more ways to draw more revenue. So
Yep.
like that, I think that needs to be said. Like if you don't care about technology, start caring about technology
Well,
because
there's
yeah, it's in everything.
there's two sides of the coin. There's the front office and the back office. So you can do new, exciting, emerging, brand new things on the front side of the office. to meet those customers where they are and how they're spending time and money, and do things that can delight them and improve their experience with your services. And even if that's other business to business customers, you can still improve how you're interacting with them.
Yeah, same concept. Yeah.
It could be, transforming how you're doing electronic data interchange or EDI and optimizing that process by doing something through a web app. And then what is that data going to tell you? Versus even on the back office, what can you do to optimize things and reduce IT costs so you can have more money to spend on other things in your organization? And there's no shortage of ideas or concepts. Some of these things have already been done and are tried and true, but there's other things that are so exciting and fast-paced moving that we have our finger on the pulse for and are helping a lot of clients light things up that, we wouldn't have gotten there without working through that with some of these folks and some of these exciting new projects that we've been involved in.
And
but the cloud is the big one, right? Like shifting to the cloud and having the benefits of what that brings to the table is probably one of the biggest changes. Still, like digital transformation, albeit a buzzword, is still happening in droves.
Yeah, for sure. And you touched on front end versus back end tech in a business. I think it's important though, those kind of go hand in hand, right? The more and more you improve the back end technology, whether that's moving your servers to the cloud or switching to Microsoft Office 365 or G Suite for your mail and files environment, like those types of moves on the back end are going to make your team that much more productive and functional. And in turn, they're going to spit out better and more useful things for your consumer.
Yeah, definitely a higher output. You can move faster. You're having a lot of that work. It's just done now. Like having to log into a VPN to get into a shared drive. If you're in Office 365 and you're leveraging Teams or SharePoint for your data, you can just do it. You don't have to do that step. It's just one extra. I mean, it's a really tiny thing, but multiple times throughout the day to keep that secure and up and running and hit that and go through all the file trees. You can just do a quick search query in Teams and get to exactly where you're going in 2 seconds. And you can even shorten it even more by doing a voice command search. I don't have to type anything. And now I'm moving really fast. And by the way, I'm all doing this on my mobile device, right? In some cases, it's impressive.
Yeah, it's super exciting to see that stuff.
So did I miss anything here? Do we have any other final thoughts that we want to cover? I mean, SwigTech is really, I believe we're very advanced insofar as like our security posture and being able to deliver these things without sacrificing security, especially given with some of the topics we've talked about with cybersecurity. But we get excited about this kind of stuff, and our ability to serve this up and align with like an agreement or an offering is. We try to fit and meet people where they are and fit their needs. So we're not giving you stuff that you don't need.
Yeah, which is huge, right? So hopefully that helps alleviate some of that stress around the technology so we can make it easier for you to move faster and meet your consumers with new and exciting technology. Absolutely.
Well, thanks for joining us, everybody, today. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to tune in.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. This was super fun. We're definitely just scratching the surface with a lot of this tech stuff. So I'm excited to see where it all goes down the road.
It'll be fun to play this back in 10 years and see how right we were or wrong.
And wrong, yeah.